briefly, but there's a neighborhood meeting tomorrow.
Oh, that's right.
Mayor, Councilmember Striegel was just in downtown Chaska a couple minutes ago, so he thought he'd maybe be 5 minutes late or less. And I haven't heard anything from Crowley. Mm-hmm.
Be a future one. That's what she's looking for.
Yeah.
Good, how are you?
Did Ben give you the clicker?
All right, good evening, folks. We're going to start off tonight with a workshop. Lori, would you take just a minute and introduce the folks?
I would. This evening for the workshop, we have representatives from Carver County and Ridgeview Medical Center to talk about proposed facility actually located in the city of Chaska. So the city of Victoria is not being asked for any approval this evening, but rather receiving information. And as you recall, our workshops usually run somewhat informally. This is televised, so folks at home may be watching. We're going to start off tonight with a presentation from Rod Franks, who's the Director of Health and Human Services, and then he's got a short PowerPoint and can introduce some of the other representatives from the county and Ridgeview that are here.
Perfect. Thank you, Lori. Gentlemen, if when you come up, if you'd please state your name and your position for the record, just so that we have that. And then who would ever like to begin?
Rod Franks, the Director of Health and Human Services for Carver County. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for making yourselves available for us to present on the Residential Crisis Stabilization Center. Now that's a big mouthful. I keep saying that and asking for some ideas of what it is right now. I prepared a short PowerPoint to kind of go through the project and some of the history of the site and location. It's pretty quick, but hopefully it'll help frame some of the context of our conversation and maybe some of the questions that you may have as well. So I just wanted to start out with just clarifying what the vision of Carver County Health and Human Services is, and that's really to create a county where our communities and our individuals are safe, healthy, and secure. And really, the project that we're proposing to really fits in with all three of those objectives to help create a safe place to live, play, and work, as well as be healthy and secure. just from a little bit broader view, you can see Lake Bavaria off to the right. And a much little bigger sense. So to get a sense about where it lies right within the borders of Chaska and then so close to the borders of Victoria. One of the things I'd like to note is if you look off to the, can I just go up to the border?
Sure.
Well, you won't be able to see. So you can see at Lake Bavaria where the hospice home is, kind of in the corner. One of the things that we'd like to just note as well as Victoria,
Oh, sorry, Ed. Just gonna try to help.
I appreciate it though.
There we go.
Victoria Elementary is located right here off Red Fox Drive. So just kind of giving some sense of the location of the facility, Lake Bavaria here. So just a little brief history of the site. It's really part of a 25-acre parcel that was designated to the city of Chaska as parkland. It was part of the Cheval development. Back in 2007, Ridgeview Medical Center was seeking to create a hospice residence. Seeking the site with natural amenities, you can see that as part of the, and in 2008, the city of Chaska donated about 2 acres for the location and construction of the facility. Here's a little bit of history of the home. So it operated, Bob, I think I got those date rights from 2009 to 2017.
That's correct.
Okay. There were some changes to Medicare and reimbursement for hospice care, and it really became no longer financially feasible to continue operations of the facility as a hospice care home. And so at that point, Ridgeview and the county began some discussions about how we might have an adaptive reuse of that building and repurpose it to some other community need. And so you can see the county at one point in the last legislative session was appropriated $1.25 million from state bonding funds to increase the capacity of the site. So what we'd like to do is provide residential crisis stabilization services to those individuals in our community who are experiencing a mental health crisis or a mental health emergency. A mental health crisis, you can see, is defined there as someone who has an emotional or psychiatric situation, but for the provision of some services severely inhibit or impair their functioning. A mental health emergency is defined as a person who is really in need of immediate services to address their mental health situation. So to be eligible to participate in the facility, you have to be 18 years of age. So we don't serve minors, you have to be an adult. You have to be experiencing either a mental health crisis or a mental health emergency, and not require a hospital level of care. So we're really looking at serving people who are able to take care of their own medical care needs, their own personal care needs, and at least participate minimally in the stabilization and counseling services that we would offer at the facility. You can't be admitted to the facility if you have a criminal predatory history. So, and again, you have to at least be able to participate at a minimal level in the services. So these are the services that would be included. We provide a crisis assessment and intervention, some short-term problem solving and counseling, safety planning as well. We would assist with educating people on the medications they're using and also monitor the use of their medications. We would provide some management for their symptoms and also do some relapse prevention. We would work with the families to provide family education and also support to the family to assist that family in reintegrating the patient back into their home care. And of course, 24-hour support and supervision. So the facility is staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so the people that would be using this facility are really our friends, neighbors, and family. They're people who are feeling stressed. They're feeling overwhelmed. They have plans or thoughts of hurting themselves. They have a change in their just ability to function in their everyday activities and routines. There could be an increase or change in already existing mental health symptoms. Or they need a safe, supervised setting while they're going through some changes and adjustments in their medication, which would be ordered So this is the floor plan of the facility as it currently exists. Bob, the bed capacity is six right now. We are looking to utilize the bond funds that were appropriated to increase the capacity of the facility to 12 beds. Facilities like this are capped at a 16-bed maximum, so we're looking at really coming in at around 12. We believe that that 12 number is best suited to what we see as the need of the community. So after the expansion, this is an idea of what the facility would look like. We're able to complete this expansion on the currently existing parcel. So I just have a couple of other pictures that I had just thrown in because I thought it was kind of cool. So here's just a little bit view. You can see all the property lots that are located. So the reason why I threw this one in is it's pretty clear that there are no residential lots that are contingent to the property. There are some that are close. It looks like the closest residents are actually within the city of Victoria, although the property itself sits within the city of Chaska. There was a slide at the end that said thank you and we have some questions. But it didn't really come through on my flash drive, and Ben was super helpful with the technology to actually go into my email and pull this one out and get it ready for you today. With that, that concludes the quick PowerPoint. I'd like to give the floor over to Bob Stevens from Regional Medical Center. Bob?
Mayor and councilors, let me just give a brief history of
Bob, if I may, name and position just for the record.
Bob Stevens. I am currently the previous CEO of Ridgeview Medical Center. I actually will retire officially on 12/31 of this year. And this is a project that the board of directors has given to me on the transition of the hospice residents.
Thank you.
In January of 2017, the Ridgeview Medical Center board determined that they would close the hospice residence after keeping it open for about 8 years, and every year having substantial losses between $350,000 and $500,000 a year. Most of that is related to changes in Medicare reimbursement that Rod referred to. Ridgeview is still in the hospice business. As of today, we have 122 people in our hospice program, and they'll be passing away at their residence, which could be a nursing home, it could be assisted living, it could be their single-family residence, those kind of things. But this actual residence itself, under new Medicare regulations, was not a place that Medicare was going to reimburse for in any reasonable fashion. So they really changed over the years. And we understand Medicare's philosophy. They want people in hospice programs to pass away at home and not in anything that's licensed like a hospital that the residence was. So with that, we made the decision in January. We looked at what was the best transition of this great facility at a great location, and what was the greatest need in Carver County. And I'll just share this with you, which I shared with the Senate committee when I went up to the legislature. Ridgeview, in terms of what they're seeing in their 2 emergency rooms in Carver County, both in Waconia and in Chaska, has seen a tremendous increase in people that present with their primary diagnosis is a mental health reason. In 2012, we had about 871 individuals that was their reason for coming to the emergency room. By 2016, last year, it was 3,640. Their primary diagnosis was mental health, so depression, anxiety, altered mental state, attempted suicide. 72% of those were Carver County residents. We serve predominantly Carver County within our 2 emergency rooms. And of that, which this facility will not serve, 48% was adolescents, 16 and under. So we have issues in the county around mental health. About 20% of our entire population in this country has a mental health diagnosis. It's nothing to be fearful of. It's our neighbors. Sometimes they need a place to be stabilized, and that's what we're proposing here with Carver County. So you can see here, the numbers are just going. This year in 2017 will be over 4,000 visits that are related to mental health. This slide over here just demonstrates to you that in trying to find a inpatient, so not these are people that are not going to the stabilization, but need a hospitalization for inpatient psychiatric. In 6 months between August of 16 and March of 2017, we had 127 ambulance rides, more than 100 miles to find a bed. So La Crosse, Des Moines, Iowa, Fargo, Sioux Falls, Thief River Falls, just to find a bed. That's a whole nother issue just in our state in terms of finding places for inpatient psychiatric services. So when we sat down with the legislature, we went through a process of what would it take to expand the facility to 12 beds to make it financially viable for the county to operate it. Ridgeview will still stay involved because we do joint crisis intervention with the county in our emergency rooms. It's an important service to get to people. Currently, people that need this service can go to Mankato or Wilmer or outside the area, so it's important to keep our residents here locally. A week ago, the Chaska City Council heard this same presentation. We have, the Chaska City did donate the 2.07 acres to Ridgeview. We've agreed to reimburse the city of Chaska for those acres at a fair market value of $160,000. So that will happen before the end of 2017. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about this particular program, or Mr. Rod or Commissioner Workman or Mr. Hempsey.
So if you could, in talking with residents, there's a number of issues that come up. I understand Victoria has really no say in this, given the fact that it's not within our borders, if you will. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the concerns residents have that these are potentially dangerous individuals that are being brought right next door to homes?
Well, I can say a little bit about that. So as we indicated, first off, we will only be accepting people for admittance into the facility that don't require hospital level of care. Secondly, anyone who is in need of a very intensive supervision through law enforcement, jail is also not allowed to be admitted into the facility. Again, anyone with a criminal predatory history is also not allowed for admittance. Those people are not eligible. So I have discussed, Mr. Siemens mentioned the facility in Mankato. There's a crisis residential stabilization facility, much like what we're proposing in the city of Mankato. And in speaking with their director, they can't remember a time when anyone needed to be brought from the facility to jail. They can't remember that ever happening. They have a very good and close relationship with law enforcement. They have developed a response protocol with their law enforcement. We plan to do exactly the same. And so we would anticipate a very, very similar result.
Thank you. A couple more questions. Bob, when we met and talked about this before, if I remember correctly, you said roughly about 72 of the patients that would go to this facility are already living in Carver County, and they're close to us. And then secondly, we talked a little bit about the financial side of this. And I mean specifically in terms that when the legislature changed the law, if Carver County didn't provide facilities within the county, that the county ended up having to pay significantly higher rates, so that the taxpayers ended up to moving these people to either Des Moines or wherever the case may be into a facility. And part of the reasoning behind this is to provide a spot within the county that was cost effective ultimately for the taxpayers. And even though that's Carver County, that also affects the Victoria taxpayers. So could you touch on those 2 points briefly?
Yeah, Mayor Funk, I'll touch on the 72% is the number of those mental health patients that are showing up in either Chaska or Waconia that are Carver County residents. By the way, the vast majority of the remaining 18% are from Eden Prairie, Excelsior, Scott County, that we come across the Minnesota River. Ridgeview's ER we don't have a transient ER. We take care of local citizens here. As an example, St. Francis, which is just across the river in Shakopee, because of things like Mystic Lake, Canterbury Downs, for example, Valley Fair, they have a very transient population that they take care of in their emergency room. That's not the case here. We really take care of our own. It's really within a 28 25-mile radius that we take care of people in our emergency rooms. Between the two emergency rooms, we're talking about 66,000 people that have visited those two ERs. So it's no small number. Vast majority, 72% are from Carver County. I'll let Rod talk about the financial aspects of this. I will say that every health insurer that we know will insure for this mental health stabilization because it's less expensive and it's the appropriate care. What we don't want from Ridgeview is to send someone to an inpatient psychiatric unit that doesn't need that because we have no other option. That's really expensive. Or if you see these ambulance rides of 100 miles or more, sometimes that ambulance ride is going to be more than the hospitalization itself when you're sending somebody to Des Moines or Sioux Falls or Madison, Wisconsin. Currently today we have the average stay for one of those almost 4,000 people with a mental health diagnosis is 48 hours in the emergency room waiting for a placement. That's really not appropriate when many of these people could be served by this facility.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there's a lot going on. So I'll try to address a number of the questions, and just please feed them back to me if I'm not getting exactly where you want to go. So as I mentioned, the facility in Mankato sees about 20% of the admitted population is not from Blue Earth County. What's interesting is most of those 20% are from Carver and Scott County. And so what's that saying is without this type of facility here, we are transporting the people that are in need of this service, as Bob had mentioned, Fargo, Des Moines, Brainerd, all over. And they're going into inpatient hospitalization where they may only need 1, 2, 3 days of supervised, safe stabilization services. And we are able to provide that with a facility like this close to home where we can begin the community-based stabilization services immediately. So once someone comes through the door, we're not just working with them to stabilize them in the moment. We're also creating a plan to integrate them as quickly as possible back into their home and their community and wrap around them the type of services where they can be successful. What we found with these types of services is it cuts down repeat emergency department admissions. It was an interesting statistic. The facility in Mankato had to close for a couple-month period of time during some renovation. The day after they closed, admissions for mental health disorders in their local emergency department jumped by 25% and stayed at a 25% elevated level until the day after they reopened. And so, you know, we really are talking about serving a unique need and to a mostly local population. Some questions about the financing as well?
Yeah, we talked briefly, Bob, about the cost to the taxpayers, right? If Carver County didn't have a facility, could you just touch on that briefly?
Sure, and Bob kind of hit on that too. There's direct costs and then there's also the indirect costs that we're talking about. So the direct costs are really the bills that we have to pay for these inpatient stays that are hospital level of care, sometimes for patients who really don't need that hospital level care, but that is what is available to provide the level of supervision they need. The transportation costs that are associated with those are clear direct costs that if the person does not have the ability to pay, their insurance doesn't pay, it really falls on the mental health authority, which is Carver County, to make sure that that bill gets paid and those services get provided. There's also the indirect costs. And so if we can provide a viable alternative where someone's not gone for a week or 2 weeks, far or 100 miles away from their home, but that we can get them right back into their family, right back into their home. We can stabilize them and get them back to their employment, not disrupt their family. We're talking about adults and families sometimes who have children. And we're sending that parent 100 miles away. Who's caring for the kids? Who's taking care of the family for that whole week period of time? Who's watching the pets? Who's caring for their property? And so there's a lot of indirect costs that would be a benefit as well by having this service provided locally.
Instead of having to pay Mankato or another location for it?
Correct.
Is that a significant cost difference?
Well, the administrator always says that this is where human services Services Director gets in the weeds. So that's why I hesitate, because the acronyms and the weeds are gonna start growing all over the podium here, Mr. Mayor. But there is an additional cost. It's hard to quantify because of the insurance situation. So as a county mental health authority, we cannot discriminate against anyone based on their insurance status. So we have to provide the appropriate services to anyone based on their ability to pay or whether their insurance company is gonna refund us or not. And so we really have to mine that data a little bit to see which of those people that are going through did the county really pay for, or was their insurance dollars that were available for reimbursement.
All right,
Can I
yeah, please.
next step up?
Name and position for the record,
David
please.
Hesse, the county administrator. This is definitely a question I asked our human services director, because it is important. And next week, on Tuesday, we'll go to the county boardroom and talk about a proposed purchase agreement. And it was a $2.5 million purchase, so it's not small money we're talking about. So, but I think the bottom line is that we will ultimately spend less on these particular services as an organization, and therefore it's at less cost to our taxpayers, which isn't, it's a very important thing, but I think we're looking at a much needed service that I think we all agree upon. So hopefully over the next 10 to 15 years, we can recoup those dollars that we put into it because of the lower expenses. And really, that made it, for me, an easy sell from a fiscal perspective. So it did turn a corner along the way as we're speaking to Ridgeview. We originally started talking about the facility, and it made much more sense ultimately to have the county purchase it because of that particular.
Has someone actually run the numbers, done return on investment that shows?
So we're looking at building out a 12-bed capacity. Our break even is at 5 residents. And so we can staff up to handle 12. So when Mr. Hemsey talks about being able to pay back the amount of investment that's going into this, we really believe that based on the cost avoidance savings and the additional unrealized revenue at this point that we would receive from operating this facility, that we would be able to, pay back our investment within a 10, 15-year period.
Plus, you keep people out of the emergency room, which is very expensive also for the county.
Yes, there's a significant savings by treating people in a less expensive, less restrictive environment.
So a question, some of the residents have raised questions that, okay, so we're going to expand it now. And we talked briefly about what's to stop this from becoming 50 or 60 beds sometime in the future, or taking other categories of residents, if you will. Can you touch on that?
I certainly can, thank you. I'm a psychologist by training, but I can clearly see we have 2.07 acres, and when we build out those extra 6 beds, we will be at about the max of what that site will be able to handle.
Right, that's assuming that you don't go back to Carver, or Chaska rather, and Chaska allocates additional acreage for an additional expansion.
Well, I could say when we were visiting Chaska, they expressed that concern of building this and making it look too large and potentially inappropriate for this particular site. So we would have to go back through their building processes to get that done. We do not have any plans to do that at this point. There was a competitor that had a plan to do that in terms of the bidding on this particular property. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're in this room right now, is that we look at this as a property that fit our needs for the immediate and long term.
Is 12 beds enough? I mean, the questions about a bigger facility come from the fact it's hard to believe 12 beds satisfies the need.
Well, these facilities that I mentioned earlier can be no more than 16 beds. So that's the maximum that the state would allow. We really considered, would we want to go that big? There's some other considerations that come into play as far as increased staffing, need. We're not really sure that those extra beds would be really utilized by our local population, yet we'd be paying for that space. And so we really see 12 beds as, the point of highest return.
Got it. Are there any other similar facilities to what's being proposed here within Carver County?
There are not.
This would be the first one.
This would be.
One last question. Bob, when we talked, if I remember right, you told me that at Ridgeview now, at your facility over there on 212 and 41, that you something like 200 patients of this category go through that facility on an outpatient basis on a daily, every day. Is that accurate? Do I have that right?
Close. At the 212 Medical Center, the second largest tenant that we have is Prairie Care. Prairie Care has a contract with Eastern Carver County Schools and other schools, but predominantly Eastern Carver County. There's about 180 adolescents that go to 212 every day, Monday through Friday, for what they call partial hospitalization. So they get treated there for behavioral issues, depression, maybe they've attempted suicide, and they may go back for part of the school day, or they may spend their whole day at 212, at least for a short amount of time, and then they go back to their residence at that night. But it's about 180. The program has grown substantially, and as we speak, Prairie Care is looking for additional space at 212.
So this is the same as that, other than the fact that these are adult patients versus adolescents.
The big difference is this is an overnight 24 facility where the maximum length of stay is 10 days. So, and the average length of stay is about 3 days.
Got it. Thanks. Counsel?
There's no chemical dependency treatment here. This excludes addicts and chemically dependent people.
It is
Or not.
designed to treat chemical dependency, although we know that many of those people whose primary condition may be a mental health crisis or emergency may have also used chemicals. Those persons that are in need of intensive or medically necessitated detox services are not admitted to the facility. We're not able to provide that level of supervised medical care.
Counsel?
Are all of these residents going to need referrals from a different facility, or will you accept walk-in? And if you do walk-ins, how are they screened?
So we would accept referrals to the facility from a wide range of sources, which would include people walking up or being driven up by their family, being referred from the emergency department at either of the hospitals in our area. Law enforcement may, end up bringing someone there. The first step that anyone goes through is to complete a comprehensive crisis assessment. That assessment is very thorough and is conducted by a mental health professional who is a county employee. On the basis of that assessment, a determination would be made about what the next step would be. And that next step could be admission into this residential crisis stabilization facility. It could be to create a safety plan and go home with the family members. It could be that we need to get an ambulance and transport this person to an inpatient hospital stay.
And that happens somewhere else before they're brought here.
It could happen through our mobile crisis response that we do. So a crisis assessment could be done by a mobile crisis responder in someone's home, and the determination is made that let's get in the car and let's drive this person to the facility. It could be that the person ends up at the facility and the crisis assessment is done on site.
What's the protocol in that regard for ERs to refer patients over there? Do they do the assessments and?
No, great question. Ridgeview does contract with Carver County for all of the crisis intervention for mental health. We've done that for decades, literally, in both of our Chaska and Waconia emergency room departments. So that staff will come in and assess what the need is of that particular patient and the family and what the best disposition is. It could be back to home. It could be to an inpatient psychiatric unit at Hennepin County or Des Moines or wherever, or it could be this facility if appropriate.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is, people can arrive at the facility by a number of different avenues, and some may be perfectly suited to that environment, which sounds like a really good thing to have in the community. But some may be completely incompatible with it for a number of reasons. And what I'm interested to understand is the staff that you have there, whether these people bring themselves there or are brought by a family member or an ER refers them or something, how prepared are they? What kind of security do you have around that kind of admitting zone that prevents somebody who's really not an appropriate fit for there from becoming a problem there?
I'll start and then let Rod. If it comes from the emergency room, they've already been assessed, and they've already been determined with that patient and most likely the family members that the crisis center is the most appropriate setting. So if they go to the emergency room, we've assessed them about all options for them and what is the best. But I think what you may be talking about, Counselor, is if someone comes in directly from home or otherwise.
Yeah, and even the comment about, thank you, yes, you got it, interpreted that correctly. And also, I think the comment about law enforcement may bring them there. Again, what level of kind of assessing has been done by anybody who might bring them there? Obviously, you can't, private individuals, you can't expect that, but.
A month ago, I had a conversation with the Carver County Sheriff, who indicated to me that as of that point, his deputies had already responded to more mental health calls than they had in the entirety of the year before. And so those people that are out on the street, those patrol deputies, they are running into situations where people are in the midst of a mental health crisis or emergency, and they may or may not be in the commission of any type of crime, but yet law enforcement is a first responder, and sometimes they're right on the scene. What we're trying to do is to provide an additional tool for them to use in how they deal with these situations, to help them and assist them in the most appropriate course of action and de-escalation of anything that might become more intensive in an unintended kind of way. So if law enforcement does come to the facility with a referral, part of the protocol in the other facilities is for law enforcement to stay on site or close by until the assessment is made and the appropriate kind of decision about disposition is done. If someone's coming from the ED, that crisis assessment has already been done and the recommendation for the facility has already been made. If someone shows up with a family member, there's an initial assumption that they were able to get into the car with their family member, that they were able to handle the ride, and that they are able to initially engage in the assessment. So we have a living room setting is what we call it, where we have a place where we will be able, before a person is allowed into the area where the patients are, to really conduct that assessment. The facility itself is not locked from the inside, but it is locked from the outside. So not everyone can just enter through the door. So there's a process of getting in to the facility, and that's to maintain the safety of those that are there, but also to begin the triage process right from the very beginning when someone steps up under the overhang of the porch.
Thank you. And so by not being locked from the inside, meaning at any point anyone can walk out?
It is, yes, that's correct. People are there voluntarily. They're not court ordered, and they're not under law enforcement jurisdiction to be there.
And that includes the intake or admitting area?
Yep, we would not be holding anyone against their will unless, of course, law enforcement were called, and they would be the ones making that decision.
Thank you.
I want to thank you both. You took a lot of time to speak on the phone, and I really appreciate that. It helped me to learn a lot about the services, and this is it's very clear from what you presented and just things in general that are going on at a facility like this, I think, is needed. The one question that I still haven't been able to come up with an answer is in response to concerns that, frankly, my neighbors and other citizens of Victoria have expressed to me, and that is safety protocols. And I asked for this quite a while ago, and I still don't understand or hear a response, and I don't have an answer to bring to my constituents, and so I guess I'm asking for your help. Yes, I think the facility is needed. My concern is the proximity to the elementary school and the proximity to the homes in the area. And it's great that the people in Mankato can't remember an issue. I think it's wonderful, but it only takes one, and I don't want to have a failure of imagination in Victoria. So how do we plan for the worst case and make sure that we're prepared with all the protocols in place, and I don't know what those protocols are, but I want to make sure that we protect our citizens. So in my mind, those have to be in place in order for me to support this.
Well, you bring up a very good point. One of the things we have in our advantage is we aren't the first facility to attempt to do this. So there is some history of other facilities that have had to wrestle and struggle with exactly the question that you're raising. And so we really plan to build on the knowledge that has been created from the other types of facilities of this site, take that knowledge, work very closely with our law enforcement partners, and to develop those security protocols that best fit the resources that we have available, the relationships that we have with our law enforcement, and also the needs of the community as well. And we are also looking at working with a professional vendor to actually provide the operations of the facility. And so we would really need to bring them to the table too. So while we have some general outlines about what the process to maintain security would be, getting down to defining the actual protocols will be really part of that process. What I can tell you is we take security very seriously. It's part of our mission statement. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to share that. You know, if people aren't secure in the types of services that we provided, they're not going to be able to benefit from what it is we're trying to do, and neither will the community.
So will those protocols be in place and staff trained prior to this facility opening?
That is correct.
I guess what I would hope would be that the protocols would be defined and communicated before plans go forward with the facility. I'd like to understand that in advance, just to bring a level of comfort to our constituents.
I guess to kind of build on that, it seems to me like it should be a condition of all the operating permits and going forward with it is that, I mean, again, let me echo, I think that this is a important and necessary type of care and facility and shouldn't be 100 miles away. And I worry that if it's not communicated well and done well from the outset, or even before the outset, before the doors open, that it'll do more harm to the cause than good. And I want to make sure that it lives to its promise of providing good care and a safe environment for people who desperately need it.
I really appreciate the feedback. These facilities are licensed by the state under what's known as Rule 36. The licensing process is very involved, and we have to work very closely with the state before that license is actually issued to provide this type of service. They will want to know what type of security and our protocols and how we're going to maintain safety as part of that licensing process. What's really great for me to hear is we need to really get that information out as we develop it in the most expeditious way that we can. We really want to see this facility as not only a benefit to the community, but really as a partner with our community and to really provide for all those needs. If people are really anxious about having it there, it's never going to live up to its full potential as what it may be able to do in our community. And so I so appreciate that feedback.
Is there a similar facility with protocols that could be leveraged or mirrored in any of the surrounding counties? Or is this the first facility of this type in the metro area?
Well, in fact, you want to talk about our visit coming up at the end of the month?
So Minneapolis and Hennepin County Medical Center have established several of these facilities. We're going to go visit them. We welcome any of you to come along with us. And counselors, I think your questions are spot on. I had an opportunity a week ago Thursday to meet with about 20 neighbors on the south side of Lake Bavaria. They invited me into their home to talk about the very issues that you brought up. Can this be safe? What will happen to my property values? What about the school? They're great questions. And it exhibits and demonstrates the lack of knowledge we have about mental illness. Mental illness is the most common diagnosis that we do now make in healthcare. It's about 20% of our population. Here's why this facility is so needed. If you ever want to come to our emergency room and observe, we'll make you sign all the HIPAA stuff so you can't say anything. But as of tonight, we have 6 individuals between the 2 emergency rooms that are waiting for placement. The heartbreak is, and the thing that's not healthy, is when we send people back to their home and they're not ready to go there. And particularly if that person lives alone. That's not what you want to do. And sometimes qualify for an inpatient psychiatric bed, or we're not committing them on a 72-hour hold or something, and we're sending them back to their home. And as I said, the vast majority of these people live in Carver County. So they're our residents. We have to find a stable, safe, secure place for them to get stabilized. And a lot of these people, it's just they may be on a new medication, they may be recently diagnosed with depression, they live alone. Those are the kind of things, that's what's coming out of our emergency room. But I understand, this, everybody wants to know, mental illness is an unknown, and they want to know, can I be safe? I can tell you that basically if you went around any block, well, about every fifth one has somebody in their home that has a mental health diagnosis. I can speak about that personally. We know there's great people out there. The weatherman on Channel 5 is bipolar. He had to switch from being in the evenings to the mornings because that's what worked with his diagnosis. But he's very successful in that. So they're all around us. These are our citizens. We just have to find a safe place to take care of them when they're in crisis.
Are you aware of these other facilities that you said are similar to Minneapolis and St. Paul? Are there any known problems or issues with those facilities as far as the safety question goes?
You know, not that I'm aware of, but that's what we're gonna find out. HCMC has agreed to give us all their protocols to tour us through, but these are being developed across the state. And there's great examples of the long history of these, and they're classified residential for a reason. The state wants them to be in a setting that allows people to transition easily. So, and most people will say, not in my neighborhood. I get that. That's why we think this really is an ideal site in many ways. And because of the way it's set up, it was built really to hospital standards. So it has alarms on all the doors, for example, but it's not a locked unit. And we're very clear about that with the neighbors and with the counselors for the Chaskey. It's not a locked unit. If it's a locked unit, that's a whole different type of person, or patients that are gonna go to a locked unit versus this.
So I still have a concern about the protocol with the police. If a sheriff's deputy brings in a patient and is allowed to bring in the patient, what is the protocol? What does the deputy have? How do they make a decision on whether to go to the emergency room, to the jail, or to you? And is there a stringent protocol that says that when they come to you, they're pretty much, their judgment is correct? I mean, that, to me, that would seem the most problematic is where you're getting patients that haven't been screened.
So we're not looking at being a place to divert those from jail who have committed a crime.
Right, but there's ambiguity there. There's all kinds of fuzzy things that will be happening with the sheriff's deputies. And somewhere along the line, they have to decide maybe to stop at your place. So to me, one of the big protocols is how do you get that discipline so that, you know, there's not somebody sitting there that shouldn't even be in the area.
And there certainly will be an education curve. Any kind of new facility, any kind of new program coming in that wasn't available before, we really will have to work hard to educate our partners to use it appropriately. We hope that that will go well. Our current partnerships that we have with our law enforcement do go well. And we would anticipate this being the same, but you're right, there will need to be a process of education about how this will be best be used, what is the best type of person to benefit from their time and stay at a facility like this.
The other question I have is, as a layperson, there's a disconnect for me here. Mental illness, mental health issues are serious, like chronic depression, and very serious. And you mentioned some of these people don't have family, they don't have support. Then the disconnect comes where their average stop is going to be 2 days. So I don't understand how something could be that serious, and they only need 2 days in your care.
So, great question. The answer is that this facility is set up to stabilize someone's behavior so that with additional community-based supports, they can maintain themselves back in their community setting. And so this is not a treatment program. This isn't a residential treatment facility. This is a place where someone who's in the midst of a mental health emergency or a mental health crisis can deal with that emergency or crisis to the point where they are now functioning prior to the onset of the emergency. They may not be cured. They may not have all of their problem fixed. They may need to continue into their treatment and their doctor-ordered medications for a long time to come, but the crisis has been stabilized, and then we're able to provide additional supports with them back into their home community.
And if
So,
they're not
very
sta-
good question.
If they're not stabilized, they'd be moved to the a more intensive treatment site, not remain here.
Correct. Yep, and so after a certain period of time, if the assessment is, even if you stayed here 10 days, we're not going to be able to provide you the level of stability to go back to your home, then we would look at what is the next best restrictive setting for you to get the care and treatment that you would require.
I think what you hear is a desire to support the facility and be, a voice in the community to support it, but a lack of certainty as to the details behind the safety piece, and not wanting to say, trust us, it'll be okay, but to have something kind of more concrete at the front end rather than after it's all done. And
So we do have the luxury of some time, as frustrating that is for me. I'd love this facility to open tomorrow, because as Bob has already indicated, we have 6 people who would potentially be using it tonight. It will take some time. Considering the process of working with the bonding agreement, then the construction process, and then the vendor selection and training and getting up to operational speed, we probably wouldn't look at being open the doors to receive patients until probably the summer of 2019.
During a 24-hour period, what would be the minimum staff level that would be on site at all times?
Yeah, it changes a little bit based on census and also the time of day. So anything more than 8 patients, no matter what time of the day it is, you need to have 2 people on staff at all times. Less than 8, you can have a 1 person on if they meet certain qualifications. And those are the guidelines of the state. Now, that's what's minimally required by your licensure requirements. That's not necessarily how we would plan to operationalize.
Council.
If I could, I want to make sure Commissioner Workman's recognized for attending tonight. Yeah, he's been following this issue closely, not only through the county boardroom, but as it went through the Capitol, which, by the way, we were very thankful. And quite surprised also that we received $1.25 million for this. And then also Commissioner Malushnik wanted to express his regrets he's not able to attend. Of course, he's been following it very closely. So thank you.
Commissioner, any comments?
No need to take your time, but I appreciate the questions.
All right, council, any further questions? Comments?
I would make the commitment, Mr. Mayor, we'll come back before it's open, certainly, talk about these concerns that you're raising over security issues and update you on plans. It will take, I think, at least until the summer of next year.
But to your point,
Get the doors open.
it sounds like you're going ahead with this regardless. You'll come back when you have the security, but you're going ahead with this. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, we spent a lot of time working with the board legislators, other public meetings. I'm pretty sure the board's going to support it. We've lined up the financing. The board needs to make the final decision, so there's another public opportunity for input. It's coming Tuesday. Maybe they don't want to make a decision. Maybe they push it out. But certainly it's been in the works for quite some time. So I would say probably, but it's not over until the board actually officially votes on the purchase of the facility.
so I think in the absence of a more information availability at this point in time, I think what we need is, who do we direct people who have questions, comments, and inputs? Who do we direct them to make that very clear and get some kind of a timeline on when the answers will be available?
That would go right to Rod. Rod Franks, our Health and Human Services Director at Carver County. You can find him on our website. He's going to spearhead the project, oversee the facility construction, and ultimately the operations of the selection of a provider, operations of the
Laurie, can we put a link to contact information to this gentleman so that we can, anybody who has input can get to the right person directly?
Sure.
If you can't get a hold of him, you can contact me.
That's good.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right.
I love that. I want to hear from everyone listening. Doesn't cost the taxpayers for me any additional dollars, and I want to hear the wisdom of the community. Some of the best ideas that we have about how to make this a success will come from those that actually have an opinion. And so I really look forward to hearing from you.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in and talking to us tonight. We'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll start the council meeting at 6:30.
There's a whole bunch. Want me to make some notes with you?
How are you?
Yep, it's Mark's. But... Oh, thank you. You're welcome. I can go grab one too. So visitors presentations, Mark is here. He has a PowerPoint. Thanks, Larry.
Undoubtedly a politician who gives his pivots on things that he can't give definitive answers to. It's extremely frustrating. As you know, and I've got 2 kids that will be going to be.
Go all the way up to Mark. He's got a short PowerPoint.
There's nothing in the plan roster related to public hearing.
Those will both be Kara.
Hearing aids, so
Both of these?
Yep.
And I have to open up a public hearing and close.
speaking very loud tonight.
On both?
Correct. And we'll take the brush site, and we have representatives from the county here for that one too. We basically brought the whole county in tonight, I realized. Oh yeah, brush site. This chair is very high. And that's it, I'll go get you a pen. Why am I sitting on the floor? Hi. Hi there. Oh, it's good to meet you. Yes. Okay. Got it. Sure. Right. Perfect. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. Prosecution.
You know, after a question, I think it was about time. Getting an opinion from someone as well informed as Judy, I think that's important. I mean, that was an important issue. And I thought getting an opinion from her was important.
Do I take that as a no?
Yeah.
Well, that's what
I don't know what to make of it.
Hey, John.
Get your own bag of candy.
Sweet Jesus. Where's this from?
I don't know.
you have to write, fill out a little tweet.
This is dangerous.
I don't know if it's Jim's or just get passed
I'm
around.
gonna ask him.
I moved it. I don't know if it was there. I don't want
Like, seriously. This is dangerous.
Maybe it should go.
saying, you know, I think we keep showing that way.
Give it to the audience.
Maybe it should go by where you check in.
Like, where did it come from?
I don't know.
Maybe it was from the Halloween.
Another one? You can. Thank you.
Greta's friend, like, last minute decided to try out for basketball.
Is that tomorrow?
Sounds like she was.
I thought he said next Tuesday.
A lot of good players. Kid is like a complete athlete, so I'm like, he's gonna make like.
Yeah, here, let's, if the mayor's not back, let's just look it up real quick.
She's only doing that. She wants to make the freshman team because she's in soccer. She's doing it for fun, but
Carver,
I just feel
come on. They publish their agendas.
you never know what's going
So it would be November 21st. No, that doesn't sound right though. Hold on for a second. 'Cause he said 9, didn't he? It is the next commissioners meeting. Do you have here, Rod's email? And I can follow up with him too and post that with
Yeah.
the information. But he's rfranks@co.carver.mn.us. Are you subscribed for the news flashes on the city's
I don't think so.
two-piece paper?
I don't think so.
Okay, so we can,
on. I hadn't really looked at the agenda past my.
so this list will push everything that we post on our homepage to you.
Sure.
What, remind me of what your email is.
CASUI.
Well, the
Okay.
yeah.
So you're gonna get an email saying, did you actually sign up for this? If you click confirm, then you'll start getting an email every time we post something here. It's called Newsflash. So you'll get just a email. And I'll follow up with Rod and get that meeting date and time and put his contact information out there. You're welcome.
Find the right.
That needs to be said, so I might lean on you a lot.
Is the attorney, Mr. Wolf's going to be here?
He is. He was at a meeting in Maplewood and running as fast as he could.
I call to order the November 13th, 2017 meeting of the Victoria City Council. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. The agenda modifications, I believe we were going to table item 8A.
Which one's that?
The Bose conflict of interest.
What's the reason for tabling it?
I had a note from Lori that there was a request to have this tabled. If that's not the case, if there's no other changes, then can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I would like to discuss it. I didn't necessarily, or I didn't request it being tabled, but I think it should be up to the council to determine whether or not we continue to discuss something that has been settled.
Okay, council, comments? And this is all about item 8A?
Correct. If that's,
Go ahead.
If that's the one.
Go ahead, comments?
I guess I'll ask the question of what is the point of going through something that's already been visited, discussed ad nauseum, and voted and decided. So I don't see a purpose to it being on the agenda.
Well, I think the distinction between the what was discussed September 11th is there was an evidence presented that, at least in my opinion, was pretty compelling that we should fire the city attorney and get a new attorney in. This tonight was going to talk about specifically the Board of Professional Responsibility and the conflict of interest. Since the council chose not to replace the attorney, this was going to be focused on replacing the attorney for that specific issue related to the conflict of interest. So I do think they're different, but if the council wants to vote and not have that public, there's other ways that we can deal with that issue.
Well, Mr. Mayor, it's not about having it public or not. It's about having productive council meetings. And if there are issues, clearly there are issues you continue to have with our attorney. My personal preference would be that take it to the Professional Responsibility Board on your own. Sit down and speak with him on your own. And when you come to resolution, bring it back to council. This continuation of having what appears to be a trial in the middle of a council is inappropriate.
Okay.
I'm not looking forward to discussing that topic. As a matter of fact, I'm rather sick of it. But the fact that it's on the agenda is very disturbing. And I think it'd be a waste of time because there'd be a vote and it'd be 3-2 to uphold the status quo.
So if I'm hearing the comments right,
Could I comment?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. On the September 11th, that was, I put that one on the agenda, and I had a lengthy presentation, and I truly thought it was in the best interest of the community and the council to change legal teams. From the get-go on this legal issue, I always felt that it was in the best interest of the city to try to have this issue settled from someone outside of Victoria. I thought that would be helpful because there's so many people with so many opinions, and having an outside legal team do that, I think we would have settled that. That motion was made 2 months ago. I think had we done that change, we would have a better idea where we sat on the legal fee issue. That had we accepted that, had that motion passed, it would have been a minimal cost to the taxpayers, and I thought that would have been a good idea. However, it didn't. It failed. The issue of whether Mr. Vos has a conflict of interest is a separate issue. There are new items that have been posted on this for this particular item, but if, as Councilmember Vogt said, it's just going to fail on a 2-3 vote. I'm all for. I'm not interested in having an exercise in futility. I really would like an honest debate on the issue, but if we're not going to have that debate, if it's just going to be a one-sided presentation, I would agree. Let's just not have the presentation.
I guess I take issue with the point of having an honest debate. I think we've had it. And I think going back over it again and again, because the outcome isn't what you desired and sought, it's not the same as having a debate. It's just rehashing.
Okay. Well, you say that we had a debate, but we had a lengthy presentation, and there was not one individual up here that spoke in favor of why we absolutely should retain Kennedy Graven as our attorney. That debate never happened. So, no, we didn't have the debate.
Well, I think it's apparent we're not going to discuss this tonight. I do think we're getting advice from a city attorney that does have a conflict of interest based on the board's own rulings. But if the council isn't going to allow us to have that discussion, I'll take a council member suggestion here, and I'll take it directly to the Board of Professional Responsibility, who's an independent authority, and let them decide. So, Council, is there any other discussion? If not, can I have a motion to approve the agenda minus item 8A?
I'll make a motion we approve the agenda minus item 8A.
Seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The agenda is approved minus item 8A.
Mayor, can I clarify that that item is being removed and not tabled? There's a difference
Yes.
in how that's
Yep,
handled.
Yep, it was removed.
Thank you.
Yep. Next item is the open forum. I remind everybody that when I call your name, please come up and give your name and your address for the record. First up, John Carlson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. John Carlson, 752 Tillia Lane in Victoria. I want to just very briefly, I know it's lots of people to talk and a busy agenda, briefly talk about agenda number 7A, which relates to the Carver County Brush and Yard Waste site. And I know tomorrow night there's a public hearing about this at the Arboretum. I will not be able to attend that. In the mail, the piece that I saw, it indicates that Victoria supports this. I can see some benefits to this, but also from other residents, I've also heard concern expressed about this. I guess first and foremost would be concern about traffic and congestion, because this would be for not just Victoria, but for all of Carver County, and I'm wondering if it would be for perhaps even more than Carver County. And if you look at 82nd Street and you look at Bavaria and then you look at Highway 5, congestion is getting to be, it's no big news, but this certainly will add to it. And if we're going to have commercial vehicles coming in, I guess I would just ask that the council do its due diligence in making sure that this is really in the best interests of Carver County residents. Because I think what we have right now, at least, is working for Victoria, the system that we have currently. The other point I would bring up would be this is moving a part of the Carver County Environmental Center, and I would hope that you would be asking about if there's any possibility that there are other aspects of the Carver County Environmental Center that may in the future be added to this location, or are there very definitive guardrails on what will be used here? So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next up, Julie Schmig. Julie, please name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Julie Schmieg with the Schmieg Hilltop Farm at 5475 Marsh Lake Road, and thank you for this opportunity to comment tonight. In looking at the initial concepts that were presented to the public for Victoria's 2040 Comprehensive Plan, I've already shared my thoughts with many of you in an email. I would also like to share them in this public venue tonight, as they not only speak to the future of the Marsh Lake Road corridor, but also to principles that will guide the community of Victoria as it carries its vision into the future. How do we optimize Victoria's unique landscape, culture, and sense of community in ways that offer the best use of our land? These are my family's thoughts about Marsh Lake Road. In the southward expansion of Victoria, Marsh Lake Road is the city's last chance to retain the spirit it proudly proclaims on its seal as the city of lakes and parks. The vicinity of Marsh Lake Road is surrounded by the lakes of Bavaria, Wasserman, Pearsons, and its namesake, Marsh Lake. There is a mystique that surrounds Lake Country as nature provides an era of renewal and homecoming. For many, this is the magnetic draw that Victoria holds as a place they'd like to call home. In Lake Country, one leaves the hustle and bustle of the busy burbs behind as they head homeward and breathe in the rolling hills, forests, fields, marshes, and that create the natural landscape that cannot be I gotta back up here. Marshes and lakes that create a very special sense of place. Along Marsh Lake Road, Victoria has an opportunity to preserve a natural landscape that cannot be replicated further south, as there are no more lakes to the south for Victoria to claim as its own. The Marsh Lake Road corridor presents a unique blend of farms, forests, and lakes that offer a rural appeal and mystique in the midst of emerging neighborhoods that can be cultivated and nurtured as such as we move into the future. The Schmieg Hilltop Farm lies at the eastern gateway to Marsh Lake Road. Homesteaded in 1853, it has retained a strong sense of home to this day. Our vision for the future is for this land to always be a place that people can call home. Our hope is to keep farming, but if the day does come where we have to sell, we envision single-family homes dotting this countryside and a sense a crop of new and smaller homesteads. This design maintains a flow of single-family home neighborhoods from the north, east, and west. It also complements the green space bordering our farm with Marsh Lake Hunting Preserve to the west and the Kelser Farm to the east, again fostering Victoria's City of Lakes and Parks appeal, as does Carver Park Reserve in the north. The land to the south of our farm serves as the transition zone towards the more concentrated development slated to occur at County Roads 10 and 11. And yes, at some point, Marsh Lake Road will become Pioneer Trail. Yet, even when you look at the full length of Pioneer Trail from its origins in Eden Prairie, in its westward expansion, it has managed to maintain a semblance of the pioneer era, and that it is predominantly a land of homes, schools, churches, and green acres, now golf courses. Other than the major intersections of 169, Flying Cloud Drive, and Highway 41, there's little commercial development along Pioneer Trail. As one travels the trail from the east, they encounter Bear Path, Hazeltine National, and Town Course Heights golf courses. Deer Run is just a stone's throw from Marsh Lake Road. Marsh Lake is one of the few lakes that fall directly on the path of Pioneer Trail, lending a certain mystique, which is another opportunity for Victoria to embrace its identity as the city of lakes and parks. As the 2040 Comprehensive Plan evolves, we have a chance to maintain a pioneer spirit. As one comes up County Road 11 and traverses the rolling hills towards Victoria, Marsh Lake Road serves as a gateway to a landscape that cherishes a sense of country living that still draws people to a place they want to call home. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Judy Black. Name and address, please.
Yes. Judy Black, 1938 Woodstone Drive. Well, now we know. The decision from the appellate court has come in, and they have affirmed that the district court's decisions stand. Hopefully, Mayor Funk, you and the other litigant citizens will be gracious enough to accept the court's decision and move on to better times for all of us. At the last meeting I attended, I asked that a defense fund be allowed so those citizens who wish to support the defendant's legal expenses be allowed to do so in order to eliminate the payment of attorney's fees conflict. It is my understanding this was acceptable to you and Councilmember Gregory, but it should be done outside city involvement. I did consider a GoFundMe alternative, as Councilmember Gregory suggested, but found their fees were a little more than I thought acceptable. So I contacted their defense attorney and asked if the people could send donations directly to them on behalf of Striegel and Crowley. Her answer was if Victoria citizens want to contribute to the payment of legal fees for this matter, they can send checks payable to my firm to my attention at the address below with a note and or notation in the memo of the check, Crowley and Striegel. I'm sure they greatly appreciate your help, Janelle. So I'll read into the record her contact information, if that's all right. Janelle Dresden, Anthony Oslin, Bear, and Luigi, PA, 90 South 7th Street, Suite 3600, Minneapolis, Minnesota 55402. This information has been left with the city clerk and can be found on my Petition for Victoria, Minnesota Facebook page as well. By leaving this matter in the hands of the people, you have shown us you are willing to close this discussion once and for all, and I thank you for that. I also believe that by doing this, it has additionally eliminated the need to pursue any more discussions questioning whether Mr. Vos has a conflict or not, since the topic of his conflict was stemmed by the argument of whether to pay defense fees or not. I certainly hope you agree. As the holidays are rapidly approaching, I'm asking that we remember to give thanks for what we have, offer forgiveness for past mistakes, and bring peace to the new year. Now that Victoria has been named as one of the best places to live in Minnesota, I believe if we can put this divisiveness behind us, we can become the best place to live in Minnesota. Thank you for your time.
Quick question for you.
Yes.
You've come up here, spoke to the council many times, and you've always addressed your comments to the plaintiffs. So I'm curious why you've never asked the defendants who were found by the court to have violated the law and then used public funds to pay their defense costs, why you've never asked them to resign to put an end to it. If you could comment on that, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Well, I did ask about that, and when I first started attending, I was under the knowledge that there was some sort of negotiations being made and that it was offered, but it was refused by the defendants. And when I looked into what the court decided, they said that they didn't need to resign. And the appellate court has confirmed that.
Right. I don't recall you ever asking them to resign, but that's fine.
No, I didn't ask them to resign.
Right.
The court said that they didn't have to.
Right, you're mixing issues, but that's okay. You answered the question. And one other quick question for you. I know every time you come up here, you take the snippets of your when you address the council, and you put them on. I think it's Facebook or
Yes.
Nextdoor or something. But some of the residents mentioned to me that you've never posted the clip where you came up and apologized to Alan Kildow and Professor Painter.
I didn't.
Well, you
apologize to Alan Kildow.
Alan Kildow, Professor
Nope.
Painter. Well, we can
No.
get the video clip.
I have the video.
The question is, that video has never been posted along with your other
because I had
videos.
already apologized on the Facebook page on September 11th, and when Mr. Starts with a B, the gentleman that posted on his site my clip, I did offer for him to post all of my clips. There was not an issue there. And when I did apologize, I did not apologize to Mr. Kildow because I do believe he did break the rule of 4.2. I just didn't pursue it because I was trying to keep peace.
Okay, I think the video clip is different, but that's okay.
Well, I have the video. I have the video clip.
All right, I don't want to argue with you. I just asked the question, so thank you for answering it.
Yeah.
Any counsel, any comments?
Judy, I guess I offer this based on my own what I witnessed and also feedback from a number of residents. And so in the absence of this coming from where I believe it should be, I want to offer an apology to you for and to everyone who had to witness the treatment you received from another council member a couple meetings ago. I think it was rude and it was disrespectful, and I'm sincerely sorry that you had to endure that. And I think that that's the kind of behavior that fuels kind of the anti-government sentiment and the idea that it's personally dangerous to, criticize elected officials. And we're your elected officials. You should be able to criticize us if you want, but getting treated that way in response is completely unacceptable. And I just want to, reassure anyone that I will rise to the defense of any citizen who is treated that way. And I just, again, I want to apologize, and I want to also say that, that isn't permission for anyone to be rude to the council or the staff, not that you have been, but I think decorum and a little civility on both sides of the table will go a long way. And again, I thank you for your engagement, and sorry you had to take that.
Council, anyone else?
That a little bit.
Yes.
Obviously, Mr. or Councilmember Striegel is referring to my comments to you. I asked you what you thought about referring to Mr. Vosa's conflict. And the reason I asked you is because I think that you are one of the most well-informed citizens in Victoria on this issue. You've taken a lot of time to inform yourself, and I really did want your opinion on whether or not you thought Mr. Vosa had a conflict of interest, because I did have that long presentation on September 11th to try to articulate some of those issues. There were a number of other issues other than that, so I didn't have a full opportunity to explore that one particular issue regarding the Minnesota Lawyers Professional Responsibility Board. So I did want your opinion on that, and your response was telling to me because in a sense, it told me that I didn't do a very good job of articulating that particular issue, because I feel really strong that his response from the Minnesota Lawyers Professional Responsibility Board, that he does not have a conflict of interest. I don't believe that statement to be true, because I think there is an issue whether or not he followed through with all the directions from the board to get that opinion of no conflict. So your response told me that I didn't do a very good job in that, and I'm not sure if you took it as being disrespectful.
No, I took it, you were kind of mad at me, actually.
No.
You know, I thought you were mad because the night that I did make the apology, I had informed you ahead of time that I was going to apologize, and you made a point of saying I was wrong. And so I was okay with that. And then when I came up to ask about the defense fund, you went off about that again, so I figured you just needed to vent. So I'm fine with it. You know, I did look into it a little further afterwards, and one of the things that was misunderstood when I made my statement that I apologized for was that the lawyers, when they deal with themselves, they rule themselves, they reprimand themselves, and when I went on to their site, I went on to the complaint site. And it is true, anyone can file a complaint.
Sure.
Which, when Mr. Gillard sent me the page about not being able to find out what the responsibility board said, that's when I was like, oh, well, sorry, you know, I went to the wrong page. But in fact, at some point during all of this, he did bring this forward, which he didn't need to, and the email said, Ms. Hansen said, if you have a problem, contact me. And that's what I was asking is, why didn't Mr. Kildall just call her rather than send you an 87-page affidavit?
Right, but those responses are completely confidential. Mr. Vosa's question to the board is completely confidential between Mr. Vosa and the board. Mr. Kildall could not gain any access to that.
But then he did bring that out. The email out from, he did bring that out. So he offered that up, saying, here you go.
Right.
And then even still, you know, Mr. Kildall was like, blah, 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 blah. So I was like, okay.
Long and off topic.
Why didn't he just call her?
He doesn't have that authority to.
Well, he has the email now that said she could.
Right. But there's.
Right.
We
we
took that off the agenda, and I was hoping to be able to articulate that better.
All right. Well, that's what I came up with.
Okay.
All right.
I'd like to say, Judy, I've appreciated your comments for these many months, and I've agreed with most of what you said. This city could use 100 people like you. You're passionate about Victoria, and you have what I and many people call intestinal fortitude. So, and you did evolve into a much more informed person, and you were more articulate. So I think it took a lot of guts, and I appreciate it.
Okay.
Any other comments?
No.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Okay. Thank you.
Lawrence Gooby. Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. I'm Lawrence Scooby. I live at 7848 Bavaria Road in Victoria. I'm one of the several plaintiffs in the ongoing lawsuit against former Mayor Tom O'Connor, Lonnie Bossa, Thomas Striegel, and James Crowley, just to have that on the record. And many of you know that the appeals court released their opinion this morning. What you may not know is that the appeals court is very hesitant. They are loath to overturn a precedential opinion. In this case, the opinion promulgated by the former appeals court in its ruling against Brown versus Cannon Falls. This hesitancy, I believe, is the basis for the ruling that they issued today. If a precedent ruling is to be overturned, particularly one that has as far-reaching consequences as the one in question, the appeals court's preference is that the ruling is made by the Supreme Court and therefore will craft an opinion that almost ensures that the case will be brought before the Supreme Court. We fully expect that the Supreme Court will take this case and rule on it favorably. I'm done.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Vince Bodette. I live at 1185 79th Street in Victoria. Just a comment first about the video clips that we were talking about a minute ago. They do exist on a Facebook page called Wake Up Victoria. And for the record, and in full disclosure, that is a page that I launched along with a couple of other persons, one or two of which are in this room. But anyway, the clip exists there. Now, today, gentlemen, I want to remind you that I've been up here a couple of times really stipulating my deep concerns about the fact that when the consent agenda process was used in order to approve payments for legal fees by open meeting law defendants last year, when that was used, it was used, and I have a real problem with that because it was obviously done without the benefit of public discussion. I think that's wrong. So, in disclosure today, I want you to know that I did file a complaint at county offices stipulating that those of you who voted and who were the beneficiaries of the payments of taxpayer dollars for these legal bills, those of you who voted should not have voted. You should have recused yourself, and you were therefore in violation of Minnesota law. So again, I want you to know that because that is my heartfelt feeling. I just don't think you ever should have voted to cover these things, especially in consent agenda. So I will give a copy of this complaint to city manager for distribution so all can see it. And if anybody at the press table would like that also, that's fine too. If there's any comments, I'd be glad to entertain. Otherwise, I will leave it at that.
Counsel? Hey. No, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, closes out open forum. Next item is the consent agenda. Anybody in the audience or in the council or staff need to pull anything from the consent agenda? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Consent agenda passes unanimously. Next item. Visitors presentation, Carver County Attorney Mark Metz. Mark, just for the record, I think I just introduced you, but.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Mark Metz. I'm the Carver County Attorney. Thank you for inviting me to come and present. In the past, I presented a number of years on the prosecution contracts, and my understanding is that the council has already approved the contract, but it could be nice to go through a very brief PowerPoint presentation. I will be respectful of your time. I know you have a big agenda, so I wanted to highlight a few things and go through the presentation. As you probably know, by statute, the county attorney's office is required to prosecute all felonies that occur within the county, but misdemeanors, certain petty misdemeanors, certain gross misdemeanors are prosecuted by the cities, and those cities can either hire and contract with private firms or with the county attorney's office. In this case, 10 of 11 cities contract with the county attorney's office to have us prosecute all cases. Chanhassen is the only city that contracts with a private law firm. So we serve 10 of 11 cities, and what I have indicated in the past is I think this is a good relationship because all of our prosecutors, all of our attorneys are full-time attorneys in our office, and we are centrally located right in the courthouse. We provide very intensive services for victims as well. We have 2 victim witness coordinators that provide that very attentive service, and we have this relationship with the various cities that we appreciate contracting with us. So one of the next slides talks about what our contract fees are, and what I decided a couple years ago was to do a full audit in our office to really determine, are we off, are we consistent with what we've charged in the past, and we hadn't raised our fees or anything like that in many years, so I wanted to make sure that it was fair to the cities, but fair to the county as well. And so we calculated the county attorney staff costs, and then we subtract that with fine revenue. So, for instance, in 2016, there was $91,787 in fines. So we subtract that from the cost of $202,928. Now, this contract cost allocation of $26,510, that's a contribution that the county provides. It really is their backing of having the county attorney's office prosecute for the city. So it allows us to make it affordable for the cities as well. And then the surcharge comes out in 2018 to $84,631. So that amount is then divided amongst the 10 cities based upon a percentage of the cases that we do based upon a 3-year average. So the next slide.
Before we go to the next
Yes.
slide, so if we have more criminals and more fines, we pay less?
If you have more criminals and more fines, well, if you have more fines, you're going to pay less. But if you have more cases, more criminals that we prosecute for, your fees are going to go up because we just do a higher percentage. So it could balance out. It depends upon, the fine revenue as well.
And for the record, I don't want more criminals. Let's
No.
get that on the record.
No. So the next slide shows the caseload rates and the caseload percentage, or the contract rates, I'm sorry. So if you look at 2017, there was $7,269.91 that we charged the city of Victoria. This year it goes up a little bit, and that's based upon a 3-year caseload percentage and this increase, which I will get to on the next page, about the increase for the surcharge. So if you look, 9.18% is the percentage of the cases that we handle for the city of Victoria. Obviously, Chaska, over 46% of our cases we handle. That's why they pay much more than the other cities. But it's more affordable, obviously, as we spread it out for the different cities. So the next slide shows a 3.4% surcharge increase. As I mentioned, a couple years ago, I met along with all the different city managers and Dave Hemsey, our county administrator, to talk about how to allow the county to keep up with the cost of living, to keep up with our wage increases. And so thank you for being receptive to that. We didn't want to hit you with like a 10% increase, but we hadn't increased our rates for more than 10 years that I went back. So what we're doing at 3.4%, that's consistent with what the cost of living, the wage increase that the county had for its employees for the various other agencies as well. So it could be less next year, it could be a little bit more, but for 2018 it's 3.4%. So that's the increase, and that comes to $500.03 for the city of Victoria. So that's the increase, and what I am proposing, and I think what the board has approved, is that $7,769.94 for 2018 prosecution. And then the next slide just kind of shows a little history of citations by law enforcement, how it kind of fluctuates and it differs. You can see by the county sheriff there's less citations in 2016. Obviously, we don't have the numbers for 2017. So they wrote 4905 citations compared to 5356. And, we're not so far off. The State Patrol went up a little bit in 2016. And then Chaska, because it's the biggest city, you can see they've declined in their citations. So then the last slide is who our office is represented by 33 employees, and we have about 17 lawyers, and we have a criminal division, juvenile division, civil division, and then law office management. So we really are proud of our staff, and really they're the ones that deserve the credit, because they're the ones that protect the citizens, but they advise different agencies, they prosecute for you, but overall, we care about the county, we care about everybody here, and we're doing some really good things, I think, as well. We have a veterans court that we started in our office, and we're really thriving. We have over a dozen members that are in there, and very, very briefly, it's a specialty court for veterans that have committed crimes that fit into the program. So not everybody that's a veteran that commits a crime necessarily gets into this program, but what it's trying to do is give them intensive resources, give them rehabilitation and incentives with consequences, but put them through this intensive program to get them back where they were before they served our country. So a lot of people have PTSD, and they come back from war, and they lived a perfectly productive life, and they were law-abiding, and they're struggling, and so they commit offenses. And so we try to get them in this program, and it's really intensive, and it's working. And we've had graduates already, and we're very invested, and our commissioners are invested, and I know the cities are as well. So that's one area. We're looking at a substance abuse court too, so a drug court. That's a big project. It's a lot of money as well, but I am a proponent of that. I think we're going to proceed cautiously, but we're focused on starting that in a 3 to 5 year range. We need to get the commitment from our commissioners too, but that drug specialty court also has a different focus than the traditional court system. So there's just a couple things that I wanted to highlight, and I hope that you'll invite me back in 2018, because what I'd like to do is I'd like to take some time to talk about our opioid crisis, and we don't have the time for that tonight, but I have a lot of statistics and a lot of anecdotal evidence of that as well, and we have our first carfentanil case where we're prosecuting for murder, and that was in Chaska, and so it's the opioid crisis is really serious even in Carver County, so I hope I can come back and take a little more time and talk about that, because it's a big piece of that is education. It's letting people know about, when you start taking prescription drugs and what happens and how addictive it can be. And fentanyl and heroin is really, really serious, and it is deadly.
Is there information you can send to us now on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can send you some of that information as well, and I think that's a big part of it is letting people know that there's help out there too for you and for individuals. So thank you, and I'm working on our website too to maybe make it more proactive so people can go to that.
Thank you.
I would very much welcome that presentation to be made at a future council meeting, again, as just another distribution point for the information and, part of the videos that people can see when they go back and review the meeting, because it is frightening.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Council, other comments? Thank you. Appreciate you coming in and look forward to the follow-on presentation.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda, Kara, this is yours, item 6A.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This first of two agenda items tonight that cover similar topics but different projects. The first one is the 78th Street and Cochilla Lane Street and Drainage Improvement Project. So that was the reconstruction of 78th Street and Cochilla. That was completed this year. At the October 9th City Council meeting, the City Council approved a resolution calling for a hearing for the final assessment hearing to be held tonight in accordance with state statute. A mailed notice was provided to all of the affected property owners and as well as published in the paper as required. But the total project costs are as shown here, with the proposed assessment per unit to be $11,100. This is the same amount that was at the feasibility study stage that started way back, I think in 2013, if I'm remembering how long it took us to get from feasibility to construction and finally complete with these improvements. So after you hold the hearing tonight, what would happen is we would mail another notice to the property owners to inform them of how they can pay this assessment. So following are the options for payment. So I want to just say it out loud that a specific bill is not mailed out for this. Rather, the residents will get another letter describing what their payment options are associated with making payment for this. So residents have the option to first pay in full without interest. So the amount of the assessment may be paid in full without any interest if payment is made between tomorrow and December 13th of 2017. There is an option to pay in full with some interest if they pay it after 2013 or December 13th, but before December 31st, they can pay the full amount with a little bit of assessment, a little bit of interest at an annual rate of 4.36%. The third option, if they elect to do nothing, the payment, if it's not paid in full, the full amount of the assessment will be certified to Carver County and added to property taxes for a period of 15 years with an interest rate of 4.36%. So this information was provided to the residents with the mailed notice of this hearing tonight, but we do send it out again because it can be a lot to figure out how to make that payment. But that information is provided to them. So tonight you should conduct the final assessment hearing, and then after you've held the hearing, what we'd be looking for would be a motion to approve the resolution adopting the final assessment roll for the projects as included in your packet.
Before we do the public hearing, quick question on the 4.36%. That seems a bit high. Can you help give me some context here? Is that normal?
It's 2% over what the bonds were issued for.
And that's the standard city process? Yep. Okay, so that's where that number comes from?
Correct.
Got it. Council, any questions before we open the public hearing?
Yeah, I have a quick question. If, in the event that a resident allows the assessment amount to be certified to their property taxes, is there an ability to still prepay it short of the 15 years? And if so, can those payments be made at a time other than when they're specifically making a property tax payment?
Correct. So you can prepay it, pay it off at any point in time. What typically will happen will be with the real estate transaction, we'll often have people resolving the balance of that special assessment at the time that their home sales. So that happens, I don't know how frequently. Kelly could answer that better than me, but it does occur.
And if somebody just wants to send in some principal amount, can that be done without penalty at any time, or is there limitations?
Councilmember, I believe once the amount is certified to your property taxes, your options become to pay it in full. It's not akin to your mortgage where you can send in an extra principal payment. So after it goes onto the tax rolls, my understanding is it can either be paid in full or paid according to the schedule. But we can confirm that and follow up and include that information if there's more to that story.
Okay. No, it's just a question. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Council, any other questions? Okay, at this point, I want to open the public hearing for the final assessment. Would anybody like to address the council? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The public hearing is closed. Can I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution adopting the final assessment roll for the 78th Street and Cochilla Lane Street and drainage improvements.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. That is approved unanimously. Okay, Kara, 6B is also yours.
All right, this next one relates to the 2017 street and drainage improvement project, and this one's more complicated than the last one, so I'm going to go into a bit more detail on this one for everyone. So at the October 9th City Council meeting, the council called for the hearing for the final assessments based on projected final project costs. Notice was provided to property owners. And as was shared in the staff report, since that time, it became apparent that the contractor wasn't going to be able to complete all of the improvements that are included in the scope of work in 3 of the project areas. So Swiss Mountain, Sunny Shadows, and Bay Cliff. And essentially what it comes down to is not being able to place the final lift of asphalt on those streets, as well as replacing the trail in Swiss Mountain. And the reason for that is the temperatures are just too cold. So with the conditions that we have right now, it doesn't meet specifications to place that second lift, that wearing course of asphalt under these weather conditions. It can be done. You'll note that a second lift of asphalt, if you have been up on Highway 7 at all where that turn lane construction is going, that second lift of asphalt went in while it was cold. But the risk that we run in this circumstance is that we're not going to get the same level of quality of product that we would like to see resulting from that pavement. So you can have the densities not be meeting the required densities, which affects the structural strength of the roadway, as well as the aesthetic finish of it. When they're trying to roll that pavement in cold conditions, it can get kind of a sloppy, messy look. You can see it in some of the base course. If you went and looked at it right now, it just aesthetically isn't as appealing, which for base course isn't a big deal, but for that final lift of asphalt, people do like to see a smooth, finished product. So given those circumstances, I essentially informed the contractor that they wouldn't be permitted to put the wear course down this year, and we're in the process of negotiating a change order to extend the completion date for the project until June 1st. That change order will likely be back in front of the council in the next 2 weeks. So while that was all going on, we were informing the residents that this delay was going to occur, and the residents in Swiss Mountain, Bay Cliff, and Sunny Shadows, but we mostly heard from Swiss Mountain, expressed disappointment, of course, about the project being delayed, but also dissatisfaction with having to pay their final assessment before the project is complete. It's completely within the city's legal authority to levy special assessments before the project is complete. In this city, back in the Bay Cliff project in 2008, we levied the assessments before we ordered a contract even. In that case, the assessments were so high, so we wanted to know whether we were going to be facing any appeals over those assessment amounts before we actually issued a contract for the work. So we certainly have the ability. There'd be nothing wrong if the council wanted to levy those assessments tonight. But given the concerns raised by the residents, I sat down with the finance director. She reviewed when the bond payments are due and didn't have any concern if we delayed the 3 areas that aren't complete until next summer. That wasn't going to create any problems for the city in terms of making payments or meeting any other financial obligations associated with the bonds that were issued for the project. So with that information, Lori and I concluded that it certainly made sense to recommend to the City Council that we delay the assessments for those 3 neighborhoods that aren't complete until next summer. I'm anticipating that that final assessment hearing would then be held in June of 2018 is what I'm expecting at this point. Now the other neighborhoods, McKnight Court and McKnight Circle, Field Creek Circle Townhomes, and Narcissus Court, those projects have been complete. Were complete a little bit number of weeks ago. And so we are recommending that the City Council proceed with those final assessments. So the assessments per unit are shown here on this slide. McKnight and Court and McKnight Circle are $3,000. Field Creek Circle is $2,300. If you recall, there's some multifamily townhomes at the end of Field Creek Circle, so those were proposed at 0.4 units of the regular units, so their assessment amount is $920. Those 3 numbers remain unchanged from the feasibility report and what was in the notice that was sent to property owners. In the case of Narcissus Court, we are tonight recommending that that final assessment amount be reduced to $3,800. So at the October 9th City Council meeting, we were using a projection for the final costs. We have updated final cost information projections based on the work completed to date. So we are recommending that the City Council consider a reduction for Narcissus Court. I'm anticipating that the remaining 3 areas, Swiss Mountain, Bay Cliff, and Sunny Shadows, also will be recommending a reduction in the final assessment amount for those project areas. So certainly with that, I'll take any questions. I think what's unique to note in the case of this project is we did start this project much later than we typically would. So in the Deer Run project, we had the feasibility study done, a year prior. In the case of the 2017 project, we weren't yet sure if we were going to do a street project until the end of 2016. So we're a little bit behind where we were in Deer Run. So that adds a little bit of complexity to the process. But with that, I'll take questions. Payment terms still apply. We'll send out a notice. We'll update all this information to the website and our web alerts. So the council should conduct the final assessment hearing, and then we have 2 recommendations for motions. One would be to delay the final assessments for Swiss Mountain, Sunny Shadows, and Bay Cliff, and the second one would be to approve the resolution for the final assessment roll for the areas noted.
Thank you. Before we do the public hearing, council, any questions?
I have 2 questions. One is there a delay in the payments to the contractor as well, or?
So they only get paid for the work that's completed to date, less a 5% amount that we retained. I guess I skipped over it, but I may have noted it in my agenda statement. Because the contractor did fail to meet the substantial completion date for the project, there will be liquidated damages deducted from the final amount that they're owed. We're still reviewing that, and likely we'll consider rolling that into our change order to resolve this issue officially, so we know they've agreed to it and aren't.
Okay, now another question.
Sure.
The liquidated damages, do those get used to pay the debt service on the cash that we're not getting because the work isn't finished and the assessment won't be done, or?
Well, part of what we have to look at is what our extra costs are going to be as a result of the delay. So, do we have enough engineering dollars budgeted to cover the fact that the project's spilling into another year? So that's part of what we'll be looking at over the next couple of weeks is how we treat those funds. But
okay, and then my last question is more of a technical nature. Is there any risk to the longevity of the road project, the reconstruction project, by delaying that second lift?
there actually is some benefit from my perspective in delaying it. If you recall, when we awarded the contract, I was expressing a little bit of concern about the subgrade conditions and noting that we might have to do some additional subgrade correction on the project. We ended up not having to do all that much, but having that second lift of asphalt off gives us an opportunity to see whether any other subgrade problems appear, and then we can get those fixed in the spring before we put the final layer of asphalt on. So I'm not concerned about the wear and tear on the roadway during this period before the wear course goes on, and I do think it'll allow us to discover if there's any other problem areas.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Was the decrease in the assessment as a result of the contractor having to pay the reduced price, if you will?
So Narcissus Court, because it's complete, I wouldn't have contemplated whether any of those liquidated damages should be allocated to that assessment calculation. That's just a reflection of the fact that the project came in under budget. So in the case of Narcissus Court, we ended up not having to remove and replace as much curb and gutter as we had estimated. And then there were some other line items that we include throughout the project scope for things like dog fence repairs, irrigation system repairs. And we don't know how many we're going to have, so we put a number into the budget. Same thing with the sump pump service connections. We put a number into a budget, and sometimes we're under, sometimes we're over. Same thing with curbs. So in the case of McKnight Court and McKnight Circle and Field Creek, we did quite a bit more curb than we had estimated. So that's why their number isn't seeing the same reduction. So it's really, based on what the scope of work ended up being.
Got it. Council, any other questions? Okay, we're going to open the public hearing for item 6B. Is there anybody that would like to address the council? Seeing none? Last chance. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Public hearing is closed. First motion. First resolution. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to delay the final assessments for Swiss Mountain, Sunny Shadows, and Bay Cliff until 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Can I have a motion for the second resolution here?
I'll make a motion to approve a resolution adopting the final assessment rolls for the 2017 street and drainage improvements for McKnight, Field Creek, and Narcissus Court.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, that resolution is also approved unanimously. Thank you, Karen. Next item, Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. This evening, this item is just for information purposes. Carver County is planning to partner with the Arboretum on a new compost waste site along 82nd Street, north of 82nd Street, east of Bavaria Road, which is just on the eastern border of Victoria. Just to provide a little background, back in the summer of 2016, Carver County came to the city with about the identical site and suggested that a neighborhood meeting be held. And I know at that time they got some pushback from some of the neighbors and looked at some alternative sites. And over that course of about a year now, looking at alternate sites, they've kind of come back to this one. And so tomorrow evening, there will be another neighborhood meeting out at the Arboretum that residents have been notified about. This evening, Greg Bowe, who is the department manager for Carver County Environmental Services, is here. If you've got specific questions, I'm sure that he would be happy to answer them.
I'm sorry, you said that was Craig?
Greg.
I'm
Bowe.
sorry.
Yep, and he is here this evening. So, Greg.
Greg.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Greg Bowe, Carver County Environmental Services Manager. And as Ann said, she really has the presentation tonight, but I'm here just to answer any questions that you may have.
Perfect. Ann, were you finished? Or?
Yep, sure.
Council? I've got a couple of real quick questions. Lori, you and I discussed this a few months back. I don't know exactly when. When we discussed it, I don't know where we are in the planning stages, but we had talked about this could tie into if the county ever goes forward with paving 82nd Street all the way out to give some relief to Highway 5. And as part of it, if we were to do this, and given some of the concerns from residents, as part of this, we would consider a roundabout being put in at Bavaria and 18 to better handle the increased traffic. Is that all correct?
That's all correct, Mayor. So what we had talked about and what we've talked about with the commissioner, and I'm sure Greg can provide additional info, is that the location of this facility would certainly add to the case that already strongly exists that 82nd Street is in need of upgrade. This city council has taken a position that that would be a high priority for the city of Victoria. But as you all are well aware, a very small portion of that road is within the city of Victoria, and so that's really going to be a cooperative project driven by the county in partnership with the city of Chaska. As far as the roundabout at Bavaria and 82nd Street, I don't have any problem referring it to it that way. I would just say we're not committed to a roundabout. We all, I think, have an idea that an intersection improvement is needed there, and a roundabout is sort of where our mind goes first in this day and age, but no decisions have been made to that effect. It could end up being a four-way stop, a traffic light, but I don't have any problem characterizing it as a future roundabout for conversation purposes.
Thank you. One other quick comment just for context, right, for the residents. What are we thinking about timeline? Is this something that's going to happen quickly, or is this just in the early stages so the residents will have plenty of time to provide input and see various designs? Where are we at in that process?
I think we're getting pretty close to a decision point by the county, but I'd let Greg take that.
Greg,
yes,
if you would.
Absolutely. No, that is correct. Our goal is to make a decision this fall so that we can construct the site, if it's approved, over the winter and be ready to open to serve Carver County residents, predominantly eastern Carver County residents, in the spring of 2018.
So you said this fall, as in like this month or next month?
As in November, December. Because it's easy to construct, it's easiest to construct when you've got frost in place and things like that versus road restrictions in the spring for equipment and such.
Okay, council?
What's the, there must be some estimates of traffic that are going to result from this.
There are.
And it's truck traffic. Is that true?
There are some estimates as to traffic, and the numbers I've seen, the peak vehicles per hour will be a brief period in October, which is the busiest month of the year for yard waste, and the peak estimate would be 34 vehicles per hour in a peak for just a few days to a week or two in October. April and October are really the two busiest months for yard waste, with spring cleanup and then fall cleanup before winter. And October, the peak is a little larger than the April one, due in part because of the leaves that aren't there in the spring, of course. But truck traffic, you'll see some pickup trucks, you'll see some cars, you'll see some cars with small snowmobile trailers and things like that. A lot of the grass clippings and leaves will come bagged, and so they really don't have to have a truck. When it comes to truck traffic that I'm thinking of, material being removed, grass and leaves we're going to remove once a week, and there will be no composting on site, so there'll be no odor issues. The leaves and grass clippings are the most likely to cause odors if they sit. So they'll go out weekly, but the brush will go more based on volume that accumulates there. So I don't see a large number of trucks coming and going, but there'll be one truck per week coming to haul away the grass.
And this is just more or less a collection site then?
Exactly, and that's the key I think I want to make sure I share, is that it's not in any way composting, processing. It's strictly collection and shipping off to the final processing site, which is actually the Shakopee, Mdewakanton, and Sioux in Prior Lake.
Got it. Please stay up. Ann, Lori and I talked, like I said, it was a few months ago. I believe Lori had told me that the existing site that residents use is becoming full or not. We don't have as much space there, something along those lines. Can you?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The site that we are currently use is the old Public Works building, and we see a significant amount, about the same timing as the county, April, May, and then again in September, October, and even into November now with this year with the leaves hanging out as much as they do. But we have seen a significant increase in the amount of composting, brush, over the past couple of years. So we're running vehicles quite often out of the site to dispose of it in the similar fashion that the county does. So,
would the idea be keep both sites operating or close down the old Public Works? Or
our goal would be to, if this site were to come about, we would close the site down at the Public Works facility just because of the close proximity of the new site.
Right. And just to reiterate, Greg, yes, the only truck traffic, at least other than pickup trucks, that you anticipate from this is once a week when you haul the waste out to the recycle facility or the compost facility?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. I would say once a week for grass and leaves, and we're going to stick to that goal just to make sure that there aren't any odor issues with stuff sitting around too long, and then once every 6 months to a year for the brush that is accumulated. And really that number depends on the weather. If there's a couple of big storms in the area, we'll obviously get a lot more brush of tree debris and things like that. But otherwise, I think that will go a lot less frequently.
You said that the county is going to be deciding this. Is this in a commissioners meeting or?
Yes, yeah, it would be approved by the commissioners.
Okay. Can we get notice of when that's going to be? Because I know there's a lot of residents that have been raising questions about traffic and other thing. We want to make sure that they have that information so they can attend.
So tomorrow night at our public meeting, I'll do a presentation that will talk about kind of the history of the searching for sites and the need for the site and things like that. And then we're also going to have someone from Public Works, the county Public Works, talking about not only the roads and the traffic counts, but also some different partnerships that we're going to do with cities to make sure that 82nd Street is maintained and that sort of thing. But he'll be able to talk a lot more in detail about traffic counts that are anticipated and that sort of thing.
All right, thank you. Council, questions?
From a noise perspective, what kind of equipment on site? Is there skid steers, chipper shredders?
We'll have a skid steer on site that will operate not constantly, but maybe a few times a day, maybe once a day, depending on, but volumes coming in, but to push the material back into the bunker. Chipping will only occur, as I understand it, that once per year or so when they haul the brush away. Otherwise, it won't be chipped on an ongoing basis. It's strictly done as they get ready to haul it out. The other important thing to note is that our operating hours will be 4 hours Wednesday afternoon, and 3 hours Thursday afternoon, and 4 hours on Saturday. So we're not anticipating operating there day after day after day, nor are we anticipating early morning or late into the evening when people would want the peace and quiet. It's more when people are honestly off to work, and so the noise, if any does occur, would be
So
minimal.
even in the busy season, the hours will be maintained 3 times a week?
Yep.
Are those drop-off hours, or are those just your staff work hours?
Those are drop-off hours with 1 additional hour per day for site cleanup and prep and that sort of thing. So,
And will the PV Road facility remain open and still accept brush, or is that all shifting over to this site?
the PV Road, PV Circle site will remain open and take all materials except for brush and yard waste. The brush and yard waste would all be shifted over to this site, as well as several communities in Carver County have yard waste collections of their own, predominantly out in the western part of the county. And that's a part of why this is looked at being located here, because the cities here don't have that as much. But yeah, that material would go away from the PV Road facility.
If the citizens of Victoria don't want this to happen, do we have a choice?
Well, there's always a choice, and I think that's what we're here to discuss. But I think the key is to look at the big picture and see the need and try to be convenient for the majority or the larger number of people. But obviously, yeah, that's open to discussion.
And I do
Absolutely.
understand that. I guess
Yep.
my concern is the only voices that I've heard have been against it. And I haven't heard anybody for it. So I hope that many people attend tomorrow so that they become informed.
I hope so. I've received a lot of calls and such from people, and certainly we hear from people who come to the Environmental Center on PV who say, we love this facility, but boy, the only complaint I have is the fact that the lines are long. And I'll be honest, the biggest driving force behind those long lines has to do with, I think, the yard waste and the lines that are there. So there are a lot of folks that are out there and interested in seeing that kind of change occur. But
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Is the topography fairly flat in this area? I mean, there's not a lot of
It is.
natural
It's pretty
buffering at all or
yep.
anything.
There's a little bit of a drop off on the east edge of the site, but really, all in all, it's flat all the way through, and there really aren't any issues as far as sloping and things. It's all pretty standard all the way across.
And I was actually thinking about topography as a plus if it helped provide some sound and
okay.
sight barriers. But and for me, obviously the voices of the residents in the area and the additional traffic are significant and are what really matter from my perspective. And so not that there's not a need for this facility, it's really, in a lot of cases, it may be more a question of timing. If this is still a dirt road and there's 300 cars a day for a few weeks, even though it's only a few weeks, it's still 300 cars a day, and that's, dust and wear and tear on the road. And I think there may be a small portion of this that's paved right up by Bavaria, but what about the additional road maintenance and such grading of the dirt road for the rest of it?
Yep, absolutely. The main paved section that I'm aware of is actually over on the eastern edge of it, closer to Highway 41. I think it's mostly gravel, all the rest of it. The city of Chaska does provide dust reduction treatment twice per year for most all of 82nd Street. They originally were assessing near adjacent property owners for that fee twice per year, but now the city, as I understand it, has begun to just do that twice per year dust proofing or dust reduction treatment and is paying that cost. Now, the county has said, we realize we'll be introducing additional traffic, so the county is actually going to double that dust proofing, and we're going to do it twice ourselves per year. The county is, as well as the city of Chaska will continue to. So we'll have dust reduction treatment 4 times per year. The other thought I would share is that the county in addition to, I believe the city of Victoria will actually be doing additional grading and smoothing of that road as needed, so that will continue to make that road better and less bumpy. I did want to note there was some talk about roundabouts, and the sketches that I've seen actually show that 82nd Street intersection with Bavaria as also having a roundabout. That could be in part because that's what is envisioned. That could be in part because roundabouts seem to pop up every time you turn around. And so it's hard to say, but certainly there is a lot of talk about improvements to that intersection and improvements to 82nd Street all the way across. And I personally believe that if this site is located on 82nd, that will, as Lori said, really help to hasten or put that improvement project further up on the list. So
you said the hours of operation were 4 hours a day?
It's Wednesday 3 to 7, Thursday 3 to 6, and Saturday 8 to noon.
Okay, so that's a maximum of 4 hours a day. That's 136 cars additional. So it's not 300 or 400.
No.
It's 100 and some cars
Absolutely.
a day.
And I'm
for
glad
several days a week.
Yep.
For a few months a year.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I've heard that there are rumors of up to 3,000 cars a day and things that are running rampant around the community. And yeah, in actuality, it'll be nowhere near that. The Environmental Center, which is extremely busy, usually sees a maximum of about 400 cars a day. So this site, we would think during that peak in October, we might see 120, 100 cars per day just for that brief period. Otherwise, much less than that. Yes.
So the traffic really isn't that great.
No, it's not going to be near what I think some folks are concerned about, but I understand the concern, absolutely.
And this piece of property is this actually in Chanhassen as part of the Arboretum?
You know, it's part of the Arboretum. I'm unclear where that Chan-Victoria border is because it's all shaded green on the map, so I can't actually tell.
This is within the city of Victoria.
Okay.
This is.
Yes.
All right. Which means we obviously will have a say in this then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
This being state property, really the city of Victoria has no jurisdiction over building permit uses for this. So
I sit corrected. We have no say in this.
That's a very good point, Ann. I hear that from not only cities, but the county as well, is we don't have a lot of say there. So, yes.
So, and I will be attending the meeting and can certainly bring back the concerns of the residents that are addressed there.
So if this is state property because of the Arboretum with the school, does the county have any ability here?
We have ability in that we have partnered with the Arboretum on other projects before, so we have a good working relationship with them, but we really have the same input from a regulatory standpoint that the city does, which is really little or nothing. It's the state.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's very helpful. Counsel?
I mean, the Arboretum has been a great neighbor and is a
Absolutely.
great asset to the community. And of course, I think we always try to support their efforts wherever they are. But to me, this just seems like a bad idea when it's a dirt road and that additional traffic. It just seems, like I said, a timing question. If you told me that 82nd Street was going to be improved and the intersection improvements were going to be completed and you've got a high school just down the street that way, fine, right? Then you've got roadway and facilities and infrastructure that are set to deal with the additional traffic. But to me, this just seems out of step time-wise with all of that.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner, I know that 82nd Street and Lyman Extension and all those things were on the list that the county brought forth when they talked about the wheelage fee increase and the 0.5% sales tax increase that was approved. So it's on the list of projects to move forward. I've seen no indication of which project will come first and what the timeline is on that. But really the feeling is that something like this would actually help to move that further up the scale. But obviously, I've seen no indication as to
and
time.
like a little more than a feeling. I mean, I think that if you said this is a contingency, I'd feel really good about it. I think it is a good, service and facility for the community. But just kind of crossing our fingers and hoping
Absolutely.
it works out well is not really in my nature.
Well, I've got a good idea, and that is tomorrow night there'll be a public works engineer there, and if you come to our meeting, you can ask that question, and we'll maybe get a more concrete answer, because that is a good question.
Where is that meeting being held?
That will be held at the Arboretum.
Thank you.
What time is that meeting again?
6:30 it'll start.
Have you paced this out? How many feet from Bavaria is the proposed entrance?
From Bavaria, the proposed entrance is 1/4 of a mile to the east.
1/4.
1/4 of a mile. We were originally looking at 1/8 of a mile, but talking with County Public Works indicated that as those improvements on 82nd occur, that will likely include a median down the middle of 82nd that will run something more than 1/8 of a mile, something less than 1/4 of a mile east from the roundabout if it does occur. But so we wanted to go east far enough so that median wouldn't interfere with turning in and out of the site. And so by moving it east to the 1/4 mile mark instead of the 1/8 mile mark, that gets us past that median strip. It also gets us just a little further to the east of Bavaria. I think it makes it a little better line of sight as far as safety for that turn as well. So I think there's several positives to shifting that slightly to the east from that standpoint. The site itself really doesn't move much, but the access point shifts to the east by that 1/8 of a mile.
Well, it's 1,300 feet.
Okay.
That's what we're talking about.
Yep. So there we go.
That's step on the gas for 3 seconds and then you're braking.
Exactly. Yep. It won't be that far, and some might say that's a good thing in that the traffic won't have to travel down 82nd as far until it is approved too, I suppose. But I should note also that the Arboretum has already planted several magnolia trees immediately to the west of this property, and they're planting or have already planted several chestnut trees as well. So they're going to be planting a nice screen for any properties to the west of that along Bavaria that will be blocked by those trees. In addition, the county's going to be putting, I believe, 30 evergreens and also some soil berming along the edge of this site to help to screen the views for neighbors to the west, to the south, and such.
So as a facility that is open to all of Carver County, traffic can be reasonably expected to come from both directions. Do you have any estimates on how much is going to be coming in from the short drive versus the long through Chaska gravel road?
The maps that the county would put out, regarding this service would suggest Bavaria, but you really can't, since it's public road all the way through, you really can't restrict that access. But we don't, when we determine who's bringing yard waste, we only determine, are they from Chan, are they from Chaska, are they from Victoria? We don't record an address, so it's impossible because I want to try to figure out, is it East Chaska or West Chaska? Will they be more apt to come up 41 or come up Bavaria? And we really can't make that determination, but I think that the majority will tend to come Bavaria, I think, because of the smoother, better road, but it's really hard to tell. Most people will take the shortest route, I think a lot of times too, so it's hard to say. So that's one of the reasons why Carver County has decided in this case, when we do the dust reduction treatment, there was originally a thought of just doing maybe a half a mile of 82nd Street, a 1/4 mile to each side of the entrance point. We've decided we're going to do it all the way over to the pavement by 41, just in case cars are coming from both directions at an equal number. We want to be ready and reduce that dust and kind of provide a little harder surface on 82nd Street there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Council, anything else? Greg, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anything? Unless the council objects, Lori, can we get both the mental health facility meeting coming up and this meeting for residents? Can we get them posted on the front page of the city website, since it's kind of short notice, and kind of bring attention to it?
Sure.
All right. Any objections, council?
No objection.
All right. Next item. Lori, reports?
Yeah, if I can just grab the mouse. I just have a couple of things tonight. We do have 2 opportunities for residents to provide feedback regarding the comp plan. We've had several along the way, and there will be several more. But I just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of how to do that. So if you go to the 2040 comprehensive plan on our homepage, so you're going to business and development, you're clicking on 2040 comp plan, and there are two opportunities. The first one I think is the most fun, Social Pinpoint. It is a map that you guys have seen one version of, and I just real quick show you. There's option 1, you have some descriptions and a corresponding map, and there's option 2. And if you have some ideas about what you want to do, what kind of comment you want to leave, it's really simple. You just drag the icon, fill in your comment, note whether your comment relates to option 1 or option 2, and you can go through and scroll through comments that other people have made and give a reaction to whether you like or dislike those, or you can leave your own new comments. We're getting some great activity on this, but that's kind of a fun way for people to be really immersed in what's been going on with the comp plan and provide their feedback without having to necessarily come into a council meeting. Second opportunity is also on the comp plan website, and it is the alternative survey. That's a survey that just goes through SurveyMonkey. How long should it take you, Ben? Maybe 10 minutes?
Yeah, maybe 15.
Not a super intense survey, but that'll be open through the end of this month. And we'd love to have as many people as possible participate in both of those avenues to give us feedback on the comp plan. We are also scheduled for a meeting with downtown business owners and stakeholders. Staff will be hosting them on Monday, November 20th at 2 o'clock to talk about parking in the downtown. The City Council will expect to see additional information on any Steger Lake Lane reconstruction and parking projects on the November 27th agenda. And so we are going to be meeting with downtown business owners to gather some additional feedback to bring to you at that time with the idea of a parking workshop. You had asked to be scheduled sometime in early next year, and that's still on the radar as well. Otherwise, there's a number of items in the correspondence packet, and I'm happy to take questions on those or any other.
Council, any questions? Okay, thank you, Lori. Bob, any report?
Mayor, just the obvious fact that the court decision in the open meeting law case came out. I've reviewed it. I think given that there could be an appeal, and maybe it sounds from our earlier comments like there's a likelihood of an attempt at a further appeal, I did not plan to give a report on the pieces of the case that impact the city. There are a few things in the decision that are of relevance, not to the individual plaintiffs or defendants, but of interest to the city. But I wouldn't want to report on those, I don't think, until we know that the case is truly over. So other than that, I have nothing to report.
Council reports. Councilmember Crowley?
No report.
Councilmember Striegel?
Just a kind of a comment, and it's sort of piggybacking on the city attorney's comments. The appeal decision came in, and it was 100% favorable to the defendants. And of course, we're pleased with that, and had come here with the hope of, with the statement that we hope this would finally be the end of this. But I think what I heard from Mr. Gooby is that there is every intent to escalate the appeal yet again and go to the Minnesota Supreme Court. So that's a disappointment, but again, I think we're pleased with the merits and the arguments that the appeals board issued today.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogt?
No comment.
Councilmember Gregory?
No report.
The only report I have, since we've talked about the appeal a little bit, I would imagine most residents don't understand that the appeal started long before that campaign came up and before I decided to run. And then, of course, obviously we know the results of the election. I did want to announce and let the residents know that my wife and I had already provided instructions to Alan Kildow, the plaintiff's attorney, with both my wife and I withdrawing from the lawsuits. That was before the court announced its ruling was coming out. But going forward, as a matter of record, my wife and I will not be plaintiffs going forward. So since the topics come up, I thought I'd share that with the residents. That's all I have. At that point, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. No objection. We are adjourned.
You can keep that.